Okay, the recording is on. So welcome everyone. We go to our Pathway webinar, and tonight we have the special honor to have our Chief Ambassador, Mark, our how to say, our godfather, our Pathway, our District 46, to have a webinar for us. Let's welcome Mark.
Okay, thank you, Alice. Thank you, everyone. Also, a very special thanks to all of you that are joining the webinar tonight, and especially to some of our Pathway guides that have been part of our team this year: Yolanda Rayside, Queen Walker, Audrey Brahamshaw, and if I missed any other Pathway guides, we'll find out shortly. So thank you, Alice. Thank you, all of our Pathway guides, for joining. As you know, tonight's webinar is designed to help members who either haven't gotten started, they haven't even enrolled, or may have enrolled but are just kind of not getting into it yet. So that's really going to be the focus of the webinar tonight. As you know, about 8 years ago, Toastmasters International embarked on a revitalization of the education program, and Pathways, which rolled out in a test district a little over 2 years ago, is the result. Pathways basically does two things different from the old program. The first is the change in the curriculum. Rather than members traveling on two separate tracks, communication and then leadership, what they've done now is that each of the 11 paths will, by and large, allow the member to combine, to integrate both communication and leadership training in what they're doing. And the second big change is now the modality. The means by which we access the Toastmasters material has changed from printed materials to online learning. The Toastmasters International has adopted the approach taken by corporations and large organizations that are using learning management systems, LMS vendors. And Toastmasters International has contracted with a very popular LMS vendor called Cornerstone On Demand. I know that when we do these Pathway presentations to a lot of corporate clubs, a lot of the corporate clubs say, oh yeah, we know who Cornerstone On Demand is. So that's the big vendor. Now tonight, we're going to be going over 4 different things: how to get started and select a path, how to get started on the first project, how to deal with evaluations, the mechanics of the evaluations in Basecamp, and how to complete projects, levels, and awards. We're not going to be talking about the Toastmasters process, but rather the Toastmasters Pathways process via Basecamp. Basecamp has replaced the printed manuals. Basecamp is the mechanism, the modality by which we learn in Toastmasters. Some of it's kind of technical, some of it's kind of glitchy, and we're going to be going through how to live with and deal with and hopefully embrace the Basecamp in order to learn in Toastmasters of the Pathways program. The first thing we got to know about Pathways and getting into Basecamp is, unless you have a password, there is no Pathways. Next slide, please. Oh, if we get, yeah, this was the basic agenda for tonight. I think we just discussed that very briefly: how to get started, how to get started in the first project, the icebreaker, how to handle evaluations, and how to complete projects, levels, and awards. Our first topic tonight, Alice, if you could move to the next slide, is how to get started and select a path. The thing to know about Pathways is, unless you have a no password, no Pathways. Everything we do in Pathways has to be done via the Toastmasters International website, toastmasters.org. And most of our club officers know about how to log into Club Central, but most of our members don't know about this. And so every member that wants to use Pathways and every member that wants to grow in Toastmasters will need to log in. And that will require a username and a password. The username for every member can either be the membership ID number or the email address that's on file with Toastmasters International. If the members of your club don't know their membership ID number, they can get the ID number from any club officer who has access to Club Central, or the member can also obtain the member ID number off the mailing label that often is printed on the monthly Toastmaster magazine. But I think the best answer is for club presidents. If you're a club officer and you're listening in, please provide the membership ID numbers, which are right there in Club Central under membership roster. Please provide that to your club members so they will know what their membership ID number is. Now, as you can see, they need a member username, which is their member ID. And then, of course, they need to establish a password. And they will use the standard forgot password protocol in order to obtain a temporary password and get started. So that's the first step. Now, let's go to the next slide. Now the member, like there we are, Mark has a username. I won't tell you what it is. And Mark has a password. I won't tell you what it is. So I log in. I log into the Toastmasters International website, as you can see. And Toastmasters International website has all kinds of things I can look at. I can look at Leadership Central if I'm an officer. I can download education and membership materials. But the second item from the left on the button bar is Pathways. And so anyone, if you're doing Pathways, click on Pathways. That's in the jump page. And then when you click on Pathways, if you're a new member, you can see under Pathways there are a number of options. But if you're a brand new member and you're choosing a path, click on Choose a Path. Next slide, please. Now, one thing we need to recognize about Pathways is device compatibility. Pathways is compatible with desktops, desktop computers, laptops, tablets, iPad. I haven't had iPad with me. I'm using a desktop. But right now, smartphones is based on what we know is not always that compatible. So I know they're working on the technology for that. So smartphones, not yet, or certainly it's very doubtful. So try to use Pathways, Basecamp through desktops, laptops, tablets, and iPads. Next slide, please. So you clicked on the Pathways button bar. And that's the jump page for the Pathways section of the Toastmasters website. There are 3 major columns or panels. The one in the middle we're going to be talking about very shortly, but to choose a path, you would click on the one at the left. And for 99% of our members, they'll be clicking yourself because they'll be choosing a path for themselves. So why don't we go with that, Alice? Next slide, please. Now, when you click on that, you will be, again, presented with 2 options. Basecamp versus printed materials. As you can see, Basecamp is $20, printed materials is $45. But if you're a already paid up member of Toastmasters and you've never been in Pathways before, your first path is free. So $20 actually refers to if you're purchasing a second or third or fourth path. And by the way, we have some members in our district. One member in my club, she's actually on her 4th, she's almost close to completing her 4th path. The first one was free since she used this online option, but the second, third, and fourth, she had to pay $20. Do not go, the printed material option, we are finding that something like only 0.2% of the members worldwide are using that option. 99.8% are using Basecamp. It's cheaper, but it's also online, more options, a lot more fun. And besides, the Basecamp option, the online option allows you to download all the materials into your hard drive. So you can print your own stuff and you can create your own materials. Next slide, please. So when you select the online path and don't select the printed path, next slide, please, you get in and they will ask you to take an assessment. Now, I know a lot of us have already seen these sheets that describe in broad, but sometimes in detailed manner, the 11 paths. And now we have 11 paths. And I know a lot of you, and this was certainly in my case, I had already made up my mind what path I wanted. However, Toastmasters International will not let us just immediately jump in and pick a path. They will require us to take an assessment. And my advice to all of you is kind of humor them. Just take the darn assessment. It'll take you about 2 or 3 minutes. And based on the results of the assessment, they will make some recommendations. So humor them, take the assessment, see what they recommend, and then go ahead and decide whatever path you wanted. So some of the questions are about 20 questions, as I recall. The first one will be select a language. Next slide, please. Some of the other questions are select 3 topics you're interested in learning about from the list below. Just pick 3. Don't worry about, you're not locking yourself in. You're not making a lifelong commitment here. Just pick something, make a decision, spur the moment, impulse, go with the first 3 things that come to mind. Next slide, please. Another question they'll ask you is, which of the following topics is most related to your personal goals? Again, pick the first thing that comes to your mind. And you'll go through about 3 of these questions. And the next slide, please. Then you'll get to, you'll be presented with some recommendations regarding these 11 paths. And before we go to the next aspect of signing in, just to give you a brief overview of the 11 paths. 11 paths in different ways help you develop, based on your desires, 1, 2, or 4, 3 or 4, even 3, a number of different core competencies. So as you can see, 2 of the paths basically focus on public speaking and personal confidence. The 3rd one from the top, which is engaging humor, and the 4th one from the bottom, which is presentation mastery. The other 9 paths allow you to explore a cocktail of interests that merge both communication and leadership. Okay, next slide, please. So based on your answers to these 20 questions in the self-assessment, Toastmasters will say, hey, we think these 3 are the best match out of the 11. And they even, of the 3, they even tell you this one, dynamic leadership, Mr. Laverne, is the best match for you. However, if you go to the bottom of this PowerPoint slide, I think you can see it depending on your screen, they actually have another option at the bottom, which is give me the other 8 to look at. And then you can either select one of these 3, none of these 3, or you can click on the bottom and they'll give you the other 8 paths with a button bar, and you can just select one of them. So again, humor them with the self-assessment, especially if you've already made up your mind what you want. And a lot of people, look at that previous slide, Alice, if you would. This handout has been distributed by our district, by our leadership team. It's everywhere. So a lot of members have already made up their mind based on this one-page handout. They've said, yeah, I think I know what I want. And so they've already made up their mind. So next slide, please, Alice. One thing about choosing a path. Next slide, please. Please. You might have to go, yeah. One thing we should point out about these 11 paths. We want members to avoid paralysis from analysis. I'm talking about the tendency that we all have, because we are thoughtful people, of overthinking this, saying, wow, 11 paths. If I pick this path versus that path, I'm going to get a very divergent type of curriculum. But I want to assure you that picking these paths, it's not like picking a college major. The differences between the paths are not like the difference between majoring in nursing versus majoring in engineering. It's not the difference between studying literature versus studying mathematics. It's not that diverse in terms of the concentration of the 11 paths. The reality is that the differences between the paths are quite minor, and they're a lot less. They're so minor, they really are, they defy the original expectations that we all had. When we originally heard about pathways and we were given some briefing materials, a lot of us thought, wow, this is going to be like the difference between majoring in nursing versus engineering. The reality is that the 11 paths represent different variations of a central curriculum being communication leadership with some leadership training thrown in as well. So primarily communication training with some leadership training thrown in as well, some minor variations. Now, one thing about each path, there are 5 levels that take you from basics all the way to proficiency in your chosen path. Levels 1 and 2, all the projects are required. And level 1, the 3 projects are the same in level 1 for all 11 paths. So typically a member will probably take about 6 months on average to finish level 1, maybe 5 months, which means that for all of your members joining your club, they'll be doing the same thing for the first 6 months, working their way through level 1. Level 2, again, for all 11 paths is practically the same thing. There are some minor variations. There's a project called active listening, which is substituted for, I think it's understanding your leadership style. But level 2 is primarily going to be a project on understanding your communication style, understanding your leadership style, and introduction to Toastmasters mentoring. And level 2 is really about self-discovery. So there we are. The first 2 levels, which involve about a third of the entire path, maybe a year of work, will basically be the same regardless of the path you choose. So please do not be deterred or delayed by the paralysis from over-analysis syndrome that so many of us deal with in our lives. Levels 3, 4, and 5, which will probably take you into the second year of your Pathways journey. There, the projects are a combination of required and electives, and there you get to have some fun and maybe branch out a bit and specialize in a very limited way in a different aspect of the program. We wanted to definitely emphasize that. We don't want people to hem and haw and get all discombobulated worrying about one path over another. The differences are quite minor. Okay, next slide, please, Alice. Okay, so you've chosen a path, although keep in mind the paths are not all that different from one another. And so now you want to get started with the first project. And what's the first project? Roll it, Alice.
Icebreaker.
Okay, well, yeah, then, okay, starting projects. Go to the next one. So now you go back to the Pathways jump page. Remember, the one on the left was the one you used when you chose a path. For the rest of your Pathways experience, the one in the middle, the panel in the middle, will be the one that you'll be accessing almost every day when you want to access Basecamp. And you'll select your club. If you belong to 2 clubs or 3 clubs, you'll select the club for which you are for which you're working in Pathways. And if you are the 80% of our members, no, 90% of our members are only members, and about another 10 or 15% of our members are Basecamp managers. So log in as a member, log in at your home club, and now you go to the next page, Alice. There you go. So you've logged in, and you go to your education transcript. It's in your education transcript that you will now find, next page, please, the projects in your chosen path, which is innovative planning. You click on Open Curriculum. Over there on the right-hand side, there's this thing called Open Curriculum, and voila, you open up your curriculum, and you activate Icebreaker. And it's a lot of fun, and we're going to get to that in a second. Just go to the next slide, please, Alice. Now, I want to emphasize something here. When we do Pathways and when we operate in Pathways via Basecamp, we don't get to peek ahead. Some of you that have been in Toastmasters for a while, you remember when you got the thing in the mail with the CC manual and the CL, and okay, you did your first speech was the icebreaker, but then sometimes you would read ahead to projects 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 and think, oh wow, this is really exciting. You could even read the manual and even read the instructions. They don't let you do that in Pathways. So that level 1, see those projects, evaluation and feedback and researching and presenting, you don't get access to even those until you first do the icebreaker. They don't let you do research and presenting before you do the icebreaker. You got to do the icebreaker first. They won't even let you look at, even peek inside projects for evaluation and feedback and research and presenting until you do the icebreaker. So that's the deal with that. After you do the icebreaker, then you can do evaluation and feedback and research and presenting in any order you want. But first you got to do icebreaker. And then you can't even get to level 2 until you've completed all of level 1. So that's an aspect of Pathways. It's somewhat controversial. Some people are unhappy with it. And if you are one of those, write a letter to Toastmasters International asking them to make a change. I'm sure they will be making changes based on popular demand. Now, let's get into the icebreaker. Alice, next slide. So there's the icebreaker. And as you can see at the bottom, the center bottom of your screen, there is a menu. And it's, again, a drop-down menu. And it says here, select to move to another section. And we're going to get to that in a second, but you'll see how that kind of works. And it gives you the ability to go through, to work through the thing. Now, one thing, we're not going to spend a lot of time, but the way, again, you see ToastmastersCSOD.com, Cornerstone on Demand, which is the vendor. The way it works, you'll click on Begin, and then you'll scroll always right to left in terms of the instructional material. And later you'll see that you can also download the entire Icebreaker project. All of these projects usually, when they're rendered into PDF form, usually are between 20 and 25 pages in length. But don't be afraid. Most of that paging is, pictures and white space and big print. The real substance is quite small, and checklists and all that, and it includes the evaluation guide. So why don't we just move ahead. Now, say you've done your icebreaker. Why don't we go to the next one, Alice? We're going to start doing aspect number 2 of tonight's webinar, which is handling evaluations in pathways. We're not going to be talking about how to do an evaluation. We're not going to talk about sandwich technique or how to end on a positive note. We're going to talk about the Basecamp related mechanics of evaluations. And there are basically 2 approaches. The first is what we call the paper-based approach, which is the one that most clubs are using now. And the other is the purely digital approach, which a minority, not so many clubs are using, although that was the original intention that Toastmasters had when they created this program. So let's go with the paper-based approach, which seems to be the most popular one. Next slide, please. Now, we had mentioned that each of the projects on Basecamp has a drop-down menu. And one of the aspects of that drop-down menu, usually it's like the 11th one from the top, is your evaluation. And so you can, what a lot of the members are doing are the speaker is printing the evaluation form off of Basecamp. And actually that slide, I goofed up on that slide. That green circle should actually encircle the second item. The one that says, no, the one at the top that says evaluation resource. That's my mistake. So evaluation resource is the one that you click on. Again, keep in mind, you're still in the icebreaker project. You're using the drop-down menu. By the way, I should point out, the 4th one from the top, the one that says assess your skills before, I didn't mark it here. That's actually the little quiz that you should always take before you do the icebreaker speech. It's when you take that little quiz, and it takes you about 30 seconds. That's how Basecamp knows you're doing your work. They actually don't know that you did the speech or not. They will know that you're sort of working through the project on the basis of whether you complete the assess your skills before and the assess your skills after. But bottom line, you have to print the evaluation resource. They use the word resource rather than evaluation form. It's always a 3-page PDF. I tell you, most club members are just printing the first 2 pages. The 3rd page is essentially a description of the different criteria. Pretty strict. So you don't have to bother printing the 3rd page. Print the first 2 pages and bring it to the meeting and give it to your evaluator. Now, a lot of the clubs have already printed these evaluation resources, or forms as they call it. And they're already keeping them, they're saving them, they have them on their hard drive, they're making printouts, the copies, and they're bringing them to the club meetings and helping the new member. So sometimes the new member gets lost, can't understand Basecamp, it's confusing, or they forget to print the thing. So for the new members, we got to make club officers, if you're on the line here, just print these evaluation forms for at least level 1 and make it easy for the members, okay? Next slide, please. So the printed evaluation form, you give it to the evaluator fills it out the old-fashioned way with a pencil or a pen, and they return the completed form to the speaker. Okay, next slide, please. And the speaker can archive the completed evaluation form. You can put it in a file folder in a filing cabinet. You can also, we won't go into it too much here, but you can also archive it online in the Toastmasters Basecamp e-portfolio. So this is the most popular form. Members are downloading the forms, or the club officers are downloading the form, the evaluation forms, and keeping copies and giving them to the new members to help them out. And then these forms are given to the evaluator at the club meeting. The evaluator fills out the evaluation. Like, for example, Emilio evaluated Amelia and handed it back to Amelia, and Amelia held on to it. Let's go to the next one. Somebody's having a tough day, I can tell. The other thing, of course, is that the club or the members can also download. There's an evaluation tab in Basecamp. You can download the evaluation forms for all 57 or so projects. They're sorted alphabetically. They're not sorted by level. Next page, please. Now, the evaluator can also, what happens here is that the member or the evaluator can access the digital form off of Basecamp. The evaluator, for example, can actually, this is the digital method, at the club meeting or later on, can actually fill out the evaluation online using the fillable PDF, type in some things, save the fillable PDF, and then send it back to the speaker. Okay, some clubs are doing that. I think most clubs are using the the paper option. Next slide, please. And again, the digital option, you use the fillable PDF. The speaker can archive the completed form in ePortfolio. What a lot of the club members are doing in the paper option is they get the form, the completed evaluation form back from the evaluator, and then they're scanning it into a PDF version of their written evaluation, and then they're storing it in the Basecamp ePortfolio. And it's just a cool way of having it nice, neat, and clean in a digital archive that's being maintained on your behalf. You're paying for it. It's your dues that's being maintained for you by Toastmasters in the Basecamp cloud. Okay? Or you can also save it on your hard drive. Next page, please. Okay, so we're coming up now. We've gone through the first three aspects. We're about 7:30, which is good. Before we go to the fourth section, maybe, Alice, you can unmute the folks, and we'll take about 5 minutes of questions regarding the first three sections. I know I kind of blew through those first three sections rather quickly. I wanted to be certain that we blew through it so that we wouldn't run out of time at the end. But we'll take some questions if you want on the first three sections on how to initialize into Pathways, how to log in, how to select a path, how to do the icebreaker, and how to handle the Basecamp aspect of evaluation. We'll take questions now. Also, I see we have some questions on chat, right?
Just greetings. So everyone, if you have any question, you could unmute yourself on your
5 minutes.
On your left bottom corner. You could unmute yourself. For the phone, your assistant, you could press *6 to unmute yourself. Anyone have any question?
Yes, hi. I have a question.
Hey, Sean, great. Thanks for calling in, Sean.
Thank you for the wonderful presentation. It's very informative. I just joined Toastmaster last month, and I spent some day today. I had the day off from work. I selected my path, and I selected something other than what was recommended.
Very good. Very good. You got to think for yourself.
Yes, and I would like to know, how can I go into dashboard, if that's where it would be, for me to view what were the three paths that was recommended to me by Toastmaster? Because my mentor wanted to know what were the three that was recommended, and I didn't take a screen capture of it or write it down. So I just wanted to know if I can go back and see what was recommended so I can share that with her.
That is a fascinating question, Sean. I've been working on the whole Pathways thing for a couple of years, and we rolled out about a year ago. It's the first time anyone's asked that question, and it's a great question. And you're right, you know, probably in hindsight, you could have done the whole screen capture thing. I think a question like that, there is going to be an electronic record that's been maintained by Toastmasters, maintained by the vendor, the learning management systems vendor, which is Cornerstone. There is an electronic trail of this whole process that you went through. Was it today or yesterday?
It was today, this morning.
Exactly. So there's and you know, the thing about the internet today is nothing gets erased, okay? It's someone has a record. That's a fascinating question. I've never heard it raised before. I am certain there, I forget I think it's education, something at Toastmasters.org. I think it's, what is it? Education office. I forget the name of it. Education team, or education awards at Toastmasters.org. If you go back to your Toastmasters International website, you'll see there's a section on the upper right-hand corner that says Contact Us. You click on Contact Us, and they'll give you the exact name of the email address for education-related questions or Pathways-related questions. But ask them that question, Sean. It's a great question. And when you do that, also, please provide two things. Your name, of course, but also your club number. And if you still have it, your membership ID number. It'll really make it a lot easier for them to track this down. And also, if you want, let them know, just to make it easy, what the path was that you selected. But yeah, member ID number, definitely your name, and also your club number. And ask them. I am sure they have the record. I've never heard that question before, but it's a great question.
Great, thank you so much.
Yes, Alice, you had a comment?
So, Sean, I have situation before, and what I did do, I redo the assessment because basically I remember my answer,
Great.
and then you have the screenshot again.
So redo the assessment, you know, or maybe even if you don't remember the answers, who knows, maybe a day later you've got a different attitude and different answers, but that's a great idea. Yeah, redo the assessment. Wonderful. Thanks, Alice. Great question, Sean.
I'm sorry, Alice, how do you redo the assessment? I don't see, I mean, I'll look again when I go back into Toastmasters website. I don't think I saw an option to redo.
Well, when you remember the jump page, you have those 3 panels. The one in the middle panel is the one that most of us use on a daily basis. But you recall there's the panel on the left side, which is select a path. Now you're telling me, Alice, you actually did this once, right?
I did this before because I redo the testing. Give me 1 second. Let me see.
Yeah, Sean, Alice was curious like you. She wanted to know, hey, what did I choose again? What were my answers? Yeah. It's a great question.
Let me share the screen with you so you could see. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
Okay. And while Alice is queuing up to get the answer, I will take, if any of you have questions, let's prepare to hear 2 more questions, okay?
So I have the question from Patrick, say how could we get to the base camp manager?
I think if you go 2 previous slides, there you go, right? That one. The one that you're clicking on, the one that you have the one before select an online path. That's the one. Yeah, so I think if you go back, Sean, to the original Pathways jump page where it says welcome Sean, and you're dialing into the Toastmasters website and you click on Pathways, you see those 3 panels. The one on the left is choose your path.
Yes, okay, I see what you're saying.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome, Sean. I think we have time, Alice, for 1 for sure additional question, maybe 2, depending on the length of our answer.
Okay, so I think from James. So basically, James say he forgot the path he chose. So is that information still available in the Pathway archive, or would I need to start over again? Still be there.
So yeah, James, that's a great question, a slight variation of the one that was asked by Sean. But as we mentioned earlier, you could do what Alice suggests, which is start all over again with a self-assessment just to see what the information, or you could just ask Toastmasters International, and I'm sure they have. Listen, they have a digital record, a footprint of the various things that you pressed. It is not. Unfortunately, it is there forever.
So
okay.
Basically, James and Sean, you could see here. You go to the Pathway, welcome Pathway, and then you could see that, and then you will see the path. And for your for James, you also when you log in the Toastmaster International when you account, you could see your path when you click your name, like a click mark here. You will see the profile, and then you see on the middle of the right, you will show your path.
Okay, do we have any other question before we head into the 4th and final section of tonight's webinar?
No, I think let's keep on going.
Okay, very good. We'll go into now the 4th one. And I believe, Alice, that will be slide number 28. Should be slide number 28. There you go. Okay, so now we're heading into the this was a 1 mile race. We'd be going into the final whatever, the final run around the oval. So here we are in the final quarter mile of the 1 mile race. We're looking at completing projects, levels, and awards. Now, let's go to the first one. And again, we're looking next slide, please. And then click again, Alice, so we get the bottom half of the slide. Great. Okay, so projects, levels, and awards. Who does what? We have 3 players. We have the Toastmaster member. We have base camp managers, which are 3 officers in every club. president, VPE, and secretary. And then we have a third universe, the club officer. But depending on, you know, whether it's completing a project, completing a level, or submitting an award online, depending on which of those three functions, different players have different powers and access. So if it's completing a project, that is entirely up to the member, and it's a private matter. So when you complete the project, you want to reopen the project. You recall that, take for example, the icebreaker. We had that on the first page of the icebreaker online manual. We had that at the bottom, central bottom part of the screen. We had a drop-down menu. You want to go back to that drop-down menu and complete the assess your skills after. Next slide, please, Alice. That's illustrated there, assess your skills after. I have to emphasize to everyone here, you read the materials for your icebreaker, and the materials include a worksheet. You spoke to your mentor. You spent a couple hours, maybe a whole week preparing the speech. You deliver the speech to your club. But unless you do the assess your skills after quiz, Pathways and Basecamp won't know that you did the icebreaker. So it's really important that you do that final step in completing the icebreaker project. And remember, if you don't do the icebreaker, and if Pathways and the Basecamp doesn't know you did the icebreaker, they won't let you access the second and the third projects in level 1. So humor them, do what they tell you to do, go back into the drop-down menu. I think it's near the bottom. Click on Assess Your Skills, and it's about a 5-second little quiz. And click on the next slide, please, Alice. There you go. So it'll ask you a bunch of questions. On a scale of 1 to 5, are you comfortable or uncomfortable gathering and organizing evidence to support the need, et cetera, et cetera. And what they'll do is when you've completed all the questions, I didn't show it here, but they will indicate of the 4 or 5 questions, you're supposed to answer these same 4 or 5 questions before you started the icebreaker, and then you're going to answer them after you've done the speech. And they'll actually put on the screen for you your before and your after. What was the score, 1 through 5, before you did your speech, and what's the score today? And hopefully it'll show numerically at least some improvement. But even if it doesn't, the point of doing this assess your skills after, the reality is that only if you do that will Basecamp know you actually did the icebreaker. I just want to throw in one little wrinkle here. We've had situations where members have been looking at Basecamp and all the projects, and they're really excited, and they start scrolling the screens, and they take in all the quizzes and everything. And what happens is that they end up finishing an entire level, but they forget to do a single speech. We've had some club presidents say, "Whoa, what happened to the new member? It looks like you finished level 1 already, but you haven't done any speeches yet." And that's not anybody cheating. That's just new members getting so excited and having so much fun with Basecamp. And they just flip through the panels, and they take in all the quizzes. And so Basecamp thinks you actually completed the speech and completed the project and completed the level, but you really didn't. So it's important that you, yes, do the speeches and work with your club, but also make sure you just humor the system and take these little assess your skills after, so that Basecamp will, quote unquote, know that you did the project. Okay? So you've completed a project. Why don't we go to the next slide there, Alice? Thank you. Just click again. And good. So, okay, good. So for the member to finish a project, no approval is needed by the club. But when you complete a level, and keep in mind the level 1 in Pathways is the same for all 11 paths. Level 1, we discussed this in another webinar. Level 1 consists of 5 meeting roles. It's 3 projects, but the 3 projects have to be completed over at least 5 meetings. They involve doing 4 speeches and serving as a speech evaluator at a 5th meeting. That's just a compressed summary of what level 1 does. So you've done all 3 projects. You've done everything you've been asked for. You've done the after, the assess your skills, and the before you've done the assess your skills after, and you've done the assess your skills before for all 3 projects. Now you're at the end of the level. Now you want to, next slide, please. You want to get credit for having finished your level. And there, that requires you to just click one more time, Alice. Okay, and one more time. Great. So you completed all 3 projects, icebreaker, evaluation, and feedback. You're back on your, this is the transcript part of Basecamp. You still have to activate level 1 completion, and it's just a little, it's just another administrative hoop that you have to jump through. You click on activate, and that's how you get going. Okay. Next, please. Now, when you do activate, one more time, please, and click again, and click again, and one more time. Okay, great. So what happens when you complete a level, when the member completes a level, now the club is going to be notified. The club, the Basecamp will now notify the VP Education and the other 2 Basecamp managers. And remember that the 3 Basecamp managers are the VPE and 2 other backup officers, the secretary and the president. And they are, all 3 of them are notified. It's a little more complicated than that, but all 3 of them are going to be notified. And it's up to them to approve the level completion so that you are then able to see the details of the projects in the next level. And Basecamp managers, they will mark the level as approved. And the member can now proceed to the next level. Why don't we go to the next slide? This will be of some value, I think, to club officers and to the Basecamp managers. If any of you are on this program tonight and you're a club president, a club VP, or a club secretary, this is really important. Please, when you receive a notification that a member is asking for a level completion, please act on it within 24 hours. Because as we say, assuming that you have observed that they've done all the speeches. Because if you don't approve the level, the member cannot jump ahead to level 2. And they're going to be frustrated. So please approve. Now you will get a notification, but as a Basecamp manager, we're not going to go into how to be a Basecamp manager tonight, but how to be a Basecamp manager, but there's also a report form as a Basecamp manager you can access, and that'll also tell you if there are pending level completion requests and other requests. Okay, so let's go to the next slide, please. Now, there you go. So the member has completed level 1, could be level 2 or level 3, and a level completion request is automatically sent by Basecamp to the 3 Basecamp managers in the club. Now it's up to the Basecamp manager to go into Pathways, log in, and now they will access the middle panel. And the middle panel, only if you are a Basecamp manager, you have an additional option, not only to log in as a member, but also to log in as a Basecamp manager. And again, the Basecamp managers are the VPE, the secretary, and the president. Any one of those 3 can approve the level completion. They go in, log in as a Basecamp manager, and there we go. So next step, please. You'll see the pending requests, and they'll click on that. Okay, why don't we go ahead to the next one, Alice. Okay, click again, Alice. Now here comes the fun part. Now the member has completed a level in Basecamp, and because the club approves it, the member now has the right and permission to jump ahead and start doing projects in the next level. However, that doesn't mean that the member is going to get credit from Toastmasters International and the opportunity to print a cool certificate certifying they've completed or certifying they got recognition, unless a club officer, or could be the VP or any permitted officer, then submits the level award in Club Central. So we have situations where members have finished levels, but they or the club have not decided yet to submit the award application on Club Central. Sometimes the delay is due to lack of knowledge, lack of diligence. But sometimes it's a decision by both parties, both the club member and the club officers, not to submit the award on Club Central. And there are a variety of reasons. We're not going to discuss that, but we have to respect the reasons that clubs and individual members might have. They might want to wait until the following Toastmaster year. They might want to award the club to they might want to give the award to another club, whatever. However, now the award, let's assume that both the club and the member want the award now to be registered in Club Central so that the member can get a formal recognition from Toastmasters International and not just Basecamp, and so that the club can also get credit in the Distinguished Club Program. Let's assume that's the case. What happens then is that the VP Education or any permitted officer, and I want, just so we understand, sergeants at arms, as I recall, cannot submit, or maybe they can. I think they can. I believe that the sergeants at arms are not able to submit an educational award. But also, if you are an officer, you cannot submit an educational award for yourself. So you have to get some other permitted officer. So now it's an officer, a permitted officer, who will then submit the level award in Club Central. And it's really easy. Doing this in Pathways is so much easier than it was in the old program. So let's go to the next slide, please, Alice. As you can see, for those of you that have been club officers know that in the old program, when you would submit an educational award, CC, an ACB, a CL, for example, the CC and the ACB, you had to give a lot of detailed information. You had to type in the speech titles, the dates that the speeches were done, a lot of work, and everything had to match. Under Pathways, there is none of that. All you've got to do, what will happen is that, let's say you select Mark Laverne as I'm the member here. And what happens is that the drop-down menu will pop up immediately and say, okay, Mark is ready now. In this case, when they did the screen capture, I had already done level 1. And so there's like a artificial intelligence there at Club Central. They know that the member's already done level 1 in my case in the screen capture, and it automatically pops up the option of approving a level 2 award right in the drop-down menu. And there's no typing. There's no entering speech titles or speech dates. All the club officer has to do is click on that button bar that says level 2, and kazam, shazam, the educational award goes through. It's that easy. It's just, Sean, you can't appreciate how tedious it was under the old system. You'd have to type in, the speech titles and the dates, but here it's so much easier. So I think we're pretty much, just the next slide, please. For members, and I think for officers, it's really important to observe the distinction between Basecamp and Club Central. Basecamp is an educational, it's one organization, but we have 2 systems. Basecamp is an educational system. It's where we get all of the cool curriculum. We take the Assess Your Skills quizzes, and we have access to the checklist. It's where we can download the entire project. It's where we have really cool videos. We get access to all the educational materials in the Pathways program. That's Basecamp. And it's managed not by Toastmasters International, but by our vendor, our learning management systems vendor, which in this case is Cornerstone On Demand. Club Central is that administrative system that's managed by Toastmasters International, and that's the system where club officers can add new members, renew the dues of members, change officers, change the contact information of members, but also submit educational awards. So that's the important distinction on that. Let's just go to the next slide, please, just to recap so that we really understand this clearly. When a Basecamp manager, president, VPE, or secretary, that they're the ones that approve the level completion in Basecamp. And it's only accessible by the 3 Basecamp managers, president, VPE. But then the award is submitted in Club Central, and Club Central is accessible by all club officers, and any permitted club officer can submit the educational award for the member. When we say permitted club officer, we're excluding, I believe it's sergeants in arms, but we're also, in the case of a club officer that is submitting their own award, they are not permitted to submit an award for themselves. So that's the 1 organization, 2 systems. I think we're near the end. I just want to, as a reminder, next slide, please. We are doing these webinars twice a month. We're now into our 6th month. Thank you, Alice. Alice has been hosting every single one of these. I mean, she's basically given up her Monday nights. You know, any chance of going out and having a good time, going to a restaurant, you know, a date with a cool guy, she has to give up her Monday nights for Pathways. She's been doing that like, what, 6 months now. I happen to be the one giving the presentation tonight, but we have other Pathway guides that have been giving presentations. Audrey Brahamsha, who's here online, has been doing some. Quay Fan, Calvin Chu. We're going to get Dora Abu pretty soon doing some as well, and I think I have everyone. So so that's the deal. So the next two, mark your calendars. They are 7 p.m. April 22 is our next one, 2 weeks from today, and then 2 weeks after that will be May 6th. And we'll give you the dates of the upcoming ones. So thank you for your patience. I'm sure maybe, Alice, we still have a couple minutes for any questions, as well as your closing remarks, Alice.
Okay, so I think let's answer some question first, and then I also have some good news to share with everyone. So it's from Ahmed. If you select a path but have not done the icebreaker yet, can you change it? I cannot seem to do that without being prompted to enter payment information.
Well, here's some good news. The good news is this. The good news is that you have 30 days. So when you enrolled in Pathways, you may remember it's Matt, right? Mal Alshin. You may remember that you received within a minute, or maybe 2 minutes, an automated message from Toastmasters International that had an invoice for $0. If you're a new member, it's your first path, you weren't charged, but you got an invoice. You have from 30 days from the exact timestamp of that invoice, you have 30 days to change your path. However, so unfortunately, if it's the 34th day, the 35th day, they cannot automatically change it. But I have to emphasize to people and to members, this organization is your organization. You pay dues. If you are really determined and you're really upset about it, let's say it's 2 months or 3 months afterwards, and you really are saying, wait a second, man, I haven't even done my second speech yet. And what's the big deal? Well, how come I can't change my path? Please, I encourage you to write a nice, professional, but firm and insistent email to World Headquarters and tell them how you feel. Tell them how you feel. I have to tell you, a lot of people feel as this is a great concern that many members have. I am certain that Toastmasters International is aware, and I'm sure they're working with the vendor to see how they can make things more flexible. But ask. It never hurts to ask. It's your organization. You pay dues, and without us, without the members, there would be no organization. So make sure you ask and put in a request if you have gone beyond the 30-day automatic renewal or automatic change of path option. Yes, Charles has a question. Are the assess your skill questions only for the icebreaker? Great question, Charles. The assess your skills questions are for all of the projects in Pathways. And as I mentioned earlier, the only way that Basecamp knows electronically that you finished a project and that you did a speech is when you do the assess your skills questionnaires both before and after each project. So that is the mechanism, the online mechanism by which they, in theory, are tracking your progress in the Toastmasters program.
Sure. I think we have a person from 917-923-2334. Do you have any question? Okay, so it seems not a question. So because I have 2 news I want to share with everyone. So everyone look at Mark. The behind Mark, there's a ribbon from pathway 1 to 4, and they also will have, when you finish the pathway, also have the path name for that. So District 46 have the incentive. Once you finish the path, you will get a ribbon. For example, let's say Charles, Jim, you finish level 1. You will get a level 1 ribbon from the District 46. And in the coming spring conference, May 18, 2019, the Saturday, on LaGuardia Airport, the Marriott Hotel, we would distribute the pathway ribbon on site if you haven't received it. And then I welcome everyone to attend the spring conference and also get your pathway ribbon. This is the first one.
It's going to be a great conference. We got a great keynote speaker. Wonderful. She has been a workshop presenter twice at Toastmasters International Convention. So Toastmaster, her name is Karen Batesell. She's a retired combat pilot in the United States Army helicopter. She has twice been a speaker at the Toastmasters International Conventions. And if they have approved her, it's a very competitive process to become a speaker at the Toastmaster conventions. She's passed that twice. So we thank you, Alice, and the team for getting really the best person. You're going to be delighted by her. We're going to have 2 great speech contests, a whole bunch of workshops, wonderful meals. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Thank you. And this second good news I want to share with everyone is, first, I want to thank all the Toastmasters, our fellow Toastmasters. You are doing great. I just looked at the data from July 1st, 2018 till April 4, 2019. We already have 330 Pathway Education Award. So we need to pat our shoulders and say, good job, everyone. And I want to take this opportunity to thank Mark, the whole Pathway team, and the Pathway guys, and including Calvin, Quifan, Audrey, Dora, Stephanie.
Stephanie, yes.
Yeah, and it's a teamwork. It's really amazing. And I compare to other districts, and everyone say our District 46 is wonderful. We're kind of like overseeing others. So I want to thank you, each one of you, because of you, and we work together to achieve so many Pathway Education awards, and also let us very proud of ourselves. So thank you, each one of you.
Thank you. And we also want to, the individual you mentioned, Alice, were among 49 Pathway guides. And they also include wonderful people like Queen Walker and Yolanda Rayside, who I think is also on this call, and many others as well. So
yeah, thank you. Thank you, Queen. Thank you, Yolanda and Patrick Guy. We built up the foundation for the club.
The ribbons we'll be mailing out ribbons this month to club presidents. And then the remaining ribbons that are earned by members at the end of this month and early May will be distributed, presented at the May conference. Yes.
Yeah, great. And then, as usual, I would unmute everyone. So we would have our tradition. I would conclude our Pathway webinar with the warm goodbye, good night. But I want to thank each one of you to spend your time and to learn from each other. And I believe we would, District 46 would do very well in the Pathway implementation. Okay, I'll unmute everyone.
Thanks a lot, Charles.
Okay,
bye now.
Be well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye. Great presentation.
Good night, Audrey.
Bye.
Good, James.
Bye.
Good night, Joyce.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Good night, Jan. Good night, Bruce.
Yeah, Mark, you did a wonderful presentation.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you for hosting
Thank
us.
you, Francis.
Oh, Francis Best. How you doing, Francis?
Good, how are you? Very well done, thank you.
Audrey, you're still with us. Take care.
Yes, I am. Good night.
Audrey, we'll be having you do another one of these pretty soon.
I hope so.
Oh, we love you. You're great. Thanks a lot, Bruce and Jan and Joyce.
Okay, good.
Okay, good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
We're going to answer that